This was the moment of arrest. Jimmy Lai put into an unmarked police van outside his home in Hong Kong, then driven away. Police raided the publisher's office late in the morning. He was then later brought to the offices of his media company, Next Media. The paper itself released these pictures, Mr. Lai being escorted around the office by police officers. Police said they were looking for evidence, but did not specify what exactly. The 71-year-old Jimmy Lai is among several arrested in a police operation focused on his group of media outlets, including the popular tabloid Apple Daily. In a statement, police said 7 people have been detained on suspicion of fraud and colluding with foreign forces, part of the new security law. This morning around 9:45, together with our colleagues from the Criminal Investigation Department and military staff, we got a warrant to conduct an operation to search for evidence. Our operation so far is smooth and we hope to finish soon and not to disturb the operation of the media. It is not the first time Jimmy Lai has been arrested. China's state media has portrayed him as a traitor and accused him of being one of the masterminds behind the many recent protests in the city. He's a well-known and outspoken pro-democracy figure in Hong Kong who regularly criticized China's authoritarian rule. Many here in Hong Kong see him as an unlikely hero. I don't think the police should be doing this. After all, this is a media organization. Hong Kong claims to have freedom of the press, so I don't think they should be raiding the media's premises. The self-made billionaire and media owner is the only high-profile business person who so far has been willing to openly criticize Beijing. The arrests come only days after the US government announced sanctions on Hong Kong and mainland Chinese officials. It's a clear signal that China is determined to enforce the new security law despite growing international pressure.
Well, joining me now from London is Nathan Law, the chairman of Hong Kong's Demosisto party. He faces similar charges in Hong Kong and is threatened with arrest if he returns. Nathan, what do you make of Jimmy Lai's arrest?
Well, this is definitely a clear signal from the Communist Party saying that they would arbitrarily and abusively using the national security law to prosecute any political activists that they don't like. So Jimmy Lai has been very vocal in criticizing the Chinese government and protecting Hong Kong people's freedom. So that would set up a case and to threaten the others to be silent.
Well, Jimmy Lai, you say, has been very vocal. You also have been part of these protests. Is he, as Beijing claims, the mastermind behind this, the protest?
Well, of course not. The way Beijing portray that is to frame these very prominent political activists to take full responsibility for all the upheaval for the past year. But actually, this is a leaderless movement. People are acting on their behalf and really devote themselves into the movement with their own capacity. So I don't think that is the reality. Beijing just wanted to cook up cases to prosecute prominent activists.
So you say the movement is a leaderless one, but how is this high-profile arrest going to affect the pro-democracy movement?
Well, it would definitely create chilling effects, which means that even though you are not so-called colluding with foreign forces, you are acting on your own willingness, but Beijing could definitely trump up cases on you, and they will scare off people who still wanted to voice out in Hong Kong. So that is Beijing's agenda, and I urge the public not to be scared of really giving out your voice.
Are you yourself, I mean, you're in exile, if you will, in London right now. Are you yourself scared?
Well, of course, we understand how far-reaching China's reach could be. And even though we are kind of scared, but it's our choice to adopt what action to cope with it. My actions would be speaking louder and louder to be able to talk Hong Kong people's demands and their genuine thoughts overseas in order to get more international attention and support.
Nathan, are you going back to Hong Kong anytime soon?
Well, according to the state media, I am a wanted fugitive. So it is unlikely that I am able to go back to Hong Kong. But if I do in the future, then it will be Hong Kong become a democracy and free place.
Nathan Law, thank you very much. Well, Nathan Law has already left Hong Kong and many others are planning to do the same. The number of residents leaving is at its highest in 7 years, according to official figures. Fears that the territory's freedoms are being eroded have forced people to consider their options.
Gary and his fiancée have just a few more months to enjoy their life in Hong Kong before they say goodbye to their hometown and emigrate to Australia. When Gary filed the application 5 years ago, leaving was only a backup plan. Since then, Hong Kong has been through massive social and political upheaval. But it was the unprecedented anti-government protest last year that finally pushed him over the edge.
This isn't the Hong Kong I grew up with anymore. Freedom has been restricted. Hong Kong will soon be no different from the rest of China. I feel even more unsafe under the new national security law. We've lost hope here, so we have to find it elsewhere.
To fight or to flee? That's a tough question for many Hong Kongers like Gary. Starting a life abroad will likely be a rocky path, even in his job as an engineer. Gary and his fiancée, who does not want to be interviewed because she fears for her job here, are prepared to start from scratch. It's a price they're willing to pay in exchange for liberty.
It's tough to abandon our well-paid jobs, friends, everything we've established here, where we were born and raised. We did struggle to make this decision, but around a third of my friends are also considering leaving, or at least sending their children abroad.
Official figures show that the number of Hong Kong residents leaving is at its highest in 7 years. Around 30,000 people left in 2019, a 40% surge in just a year. And that's expected to keep growing. Since the new Chinese security law was enacted last month, a number of countries have pledged to make it easier for Hong Kongers to emigrate. Australia, Taiwan, and Britain are among the popular destinations. The UK government will even allow nearly the 3 million Hong Kongers with British national overseas passports, a document from the colonial era, to settle there. Emigration is more than a personal choice in Hong Kong. It's also a diplomatic issue. Beijing has warned it could stop recognizing the special British passports of some of Hong Kong's residents in retaliation for Britain's offer to take them in. Some pro-Beijing heavyweights even advocate revoking the permanent residencies of those granted UK citizenship, which means they could lose the right to vote and stand for election in Hong Kong. Gary has recently been traveling around Hong Kong to capture its iconic scenery. These pictures will soon just be memories of the place he will no longer call home.
It's a sad farewell, especially since many friends will soon drift apart. I treasure the remaining chances to be together, and I hope I can still contribute to my hometown by other means in the future.
Joining me now from Hong Kong is pro-democracy activist and former Secretary General of the political party Demosisto, Joshua Wong. Joshua, welcome. What is your reaction to the arrest of Jimmy Lai?
With the threat of Beijing, which is hard for us to guarantee our personal safety, and with the crackdown and the mass arrest conduct with the national security legislation, we just proved that how the chilling effect is being used to silence our voice.
What is the message Beijing is trying to deliver to the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong with such a high-profile arrest?
We have no intention to have any collusion with the foreign force. We have never called on a sanction. since July 1st after national security law is implemented. But now Beijing just provided misleading propaganda and just try to generate more and more excuse to silence our voice and to crack down on the protests. But no matter what happened, we're just urging Beijing to hold the accountability to stop the erosion of universal value, including press freedom and also free election that all we fight for.
But Joshua, how successful are you all being really in your attempts? I mean, you as a candidate have been barred from standing in these elections, which themselves have now been postponed. Is it having any impact on Beijing?
Beijing could not censor us out from the democracy movement. They can kick us out from the office. They can censor us out from a ballot, but they can't disqualify our commitment to fight for freedom and continue to engage in the democracy movement.
You are committed to engaging with the democracy movement, but speaking about democratic processes in Hong Kong, they have been postponed at least for a year when it comes to the Legislative Council elections. The government said it was because of the coronavirus pandemic. Do you believe the government?
I believe there's no ground to expect the election will still continue. Instead of saying they try to postpone the election, now it's they hope they try to cancel the whole election at all.
But do you believe their reasoning that it's because of the coronavirus pandemic and therefore it was unsafe to hold these elections?
With the threat and the risk generated by the authorities, which is hard for us to ensure everything. But I think now is the time for the world to put Hong Kong under the global spotlight.
But Hong Kong, in a way, is being put under the global spotlight. I mean, you have sanctions that have been imposed from the United States against Carrie Lam, for instance, and some other officials. Do you think that support is working for the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong?
We are not only focusing on the move or the announcement from the United States. I think how countries in Europe react on the crackdown in Hong Kong will be also remarkable for us to realize that it's time to hold the Beijing accountability.
Do you think Europe is doing enough to hold Beijing accountable?
Different countries might have different foreign policy towards Hong Kong and China, but no matter what's their original approach and what's their consideration, it's time to reassess how's their policy to continue enhance our fight, and also how they reassess their foreign policy to the hardline crackdown from Beijing.
I'd like to talk about you. I mean, you disbanded your political party Demosisto around the time that the new security law was being implemented. You said you feared being targeted by Beijing as a result of the new security law. Do you still have those fears?
Which is hard for us to ensure our safety. And I'm not sure when I will be arrested and being extradited to China. And we might be all worried about the threat that we need to face in the upcoming future. But no matter what happens, we still have no regret at all to continue calls on free election.
Some of your colleagues, for example, Nathan Law and others, have left Hong Kong to try and bring Hong Kong's voice to the international arena. Do you plan on leaving Hong Kong, Joshua?
We'll continue to plan to fight for freedom, and that's my decision.
Joshua Wong, pro-democracy activist, speaking to us from Hong Kong. Thank you very much for your time.